There we go. Perfect. All right. So for now, we're just going to go over a few things with the long line before we start. We're actually out here working with it. So one of the first things I want to go over is what to do when you're clipping your dog onto the long line. So what you want to do when you're switching from your 6-foot leash to your long line is you always want to make sure that you have one attached and then put the other one on. So you're not going to take one off and then put the other one on. So you're going to leave them attached to one, and then while they're still attached to that one, you're going to clip the long line on, and then you have something to hold while you take the other leash off. So that makes sure that you always have the dog attached to something when you're making the transition from the 6-foot to the long line. The other thing you want to do when you're working with the long line, especially when you've got it out, and for a little bit, your dog's going to get a little distracted, obviously, by the line itself. They'll get used to it. But one of the things when you're giving them more and more space, you always want to make sure you're able to put your brake on. And when we say put your brake on, what we mean is your dog is going out, right? Going out, out, out. But then you want to stop them from going. That's your brake. So you always want to have the leash where you can put your foot on the brake to stop the forward movement. Because obviously they're going to be able to go out a lot further when they're doing on their long line. So, and then you're always going to do this too, just like you do with your 6-foot leash. Forgot to go over this part. This one's new, so I got to get all the loops out. You're always going to be holding this the same way that you hold your 6-foot line, right? So we have our wrists through here, and we have our fingers this way. So that stays pretty much the same. If you need to shorten the line, you're going to do it like this, right? So you might need to, if your dog goes out and you're teaching them come from further away, you can reel them in. So you can just kind of shorten it up as you go, like this. So again, like we did with the 6-foot leash, we don't ever do this. We don't ever loop it around. We're just going to make sure and just always know. Now be careful when you're doing this. But if your dog is going in circles, right, and you're going to easily get tangled up. So watch when you put your foot on the brake which way your dog's going, because you don't want them to get tangled up and pull you out from under. So any questions on kind of managing how to put your dog onto the leash, how to put the brake on, anything like that, how to hold?
Is it okay if you take some loops and put it in your hand? Because sometimes I get tangled up.
No.
No.
That's a good way to lose fingers.
Okay. I mean just like... Yeah,
like this, you mean? Like
no.
Nope.
So you always want it all on the ground.
Okay.
Okay? And the reason you want it all on the ground is because when it's in your hand like that, if they pull tight, you're not going to be able to let go. And that's a good way to get injured very quickly in the line. So the line on the ground is supposed to be, all the excess is just supposed to be on the ground.
And these are just for training.
This is just for training. Okay, Brandy, can you demonstrate that when you're just standing there with your dog, where should your foot be at all times?
You should always have a foot on the brake.
Unless you're actually working on stay and you're moving.
Right.
Okay. And then the leash just drags.
Yes, and you let the leash just drag on the ground. That is correct.
So if you reel them in when you're teaching come.
So I keep, so go back up and put your foot on the, so I put 5 feet out. So a little bit more. So give the dog a little bit more line. There you go. And then I keep a foot there, reach down,
okay,
and then I pull them in. Nope, not from there.
Here.
There you go. Because if you're reeling them in and all of a sudden, like what just happened, those dogs just walked around the corner, your dog takes off, you want to drop what's in your hand and let your foot brake take the impact of your dog taking off on you, okay? So it's really about safety there, okay?
You guys can see that. Even if you're reeling them in, you still have a foot on the brake.
And then now reel them in because your other hand's free. So now you reel them into you.
Reel them in, but you still have a foot on the brake.
Okay. So the only time your foot is not on the brake is when you're doing a stay or a with me, but you have that excess in front of you and you can easily step on the brake at any moment. Okay. So you're going to get good at stepping on the brake right there. Okay. So Brandy, can you tell us the purpose of why are we moving from a 6-foot line to a 30-foot line?
Right. So when we move from, when you have a 6 foot line only, right? How far does your dog, how far out can your dog go? They can only go about 6 feet from you. So you've only got control at about 6 feet, right? And when is that really kind of practical? I mean, even in your house, your dog's probably most of the time more than 6 feet away from you, right? So we've just started training them at that short line. We have their attention, but what we really want is to have their attention at a much longer distance. So when you're working with a 30-foot line, how far out does your dog have that you can still teach them the commands and control? Yep, you can go all the way out to 30 feet. That's pretty practical. Very rarely is your dog that, more than 30 feet from you. And I think the other thing we learn is that, when we're doing the 6 foot leash in our heads, it feels like the leash is how we control the dog, right? The leash is where our control comes from, but that's really not true at all. You're going to find that when you clip on the 30-foot line and you start teaching and doing things with your dog, you have just as much control at 30 feet as you did at 6 feet, and it's not about the leash, right? It's about the relationship with your dog and the commands and the things that you've taught them. Has nothing to do with the leash itself. Leashes are basically just for safety, right, when we're out and about. But our control is really our relationship and our voice, our training that we've done.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Can you demonstrate for us how to properly step over the line? Because when we're working on stay, sometimes we have to step over the line.
Yes, let's see. So if we've got stay. So if you've got your dog in a stay, then you're just going to step, let me see. You don't have foot on the brake. No.
So you don't step over the line. You step on the line to step over the line.
Right. Yep. So you're just stepping on it to go over it, right?
Because you never want the line between your legs. Okay. Okay.
So if I'm stepping like this,
and your dog
my
takes.
dog decides to move, what do I have?
You could do. I think she could do a forward flip with her legs up in the air. Okay, that's
Yes.
what's gonna happen there.
Maybe she'd stick the landing, but probably not.
But
Then I probably wouldn't be teaching class for about 4 to 6 weeks. So then you guys would be doing class without me. So, yeah.
So always step on the line to step over the line, okay? So today is all about line safety and getting comfortable with having all of that excess line, okay? So what you're gonna do today is you're gonna find some shade. You don't need any cones for today's exercise. You're gonna find some shade. So I would take this tree here and then I would do, it's a little muddy right here. I wouldn't do this one. I'd head that way over there and use the shade, or someone can use the shade along the sidewalk is perfectly fine today.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we do have good shade along
We
the
got
sidewalk there.
good shade along the sidewalk
Yep.
there. And then what you're gonna do today is you are going to do 10 recalls and you're also going to do 10 stays. Okay, so do recall first. Remember, when you're doing recall, always send the dog away to call them in. When you're working on stay, you're going to start at the dog, back up, and then come back in to reward. Okay?
Send your dog away, 'cause normally I do a sit and
So you can either use a ball or a treat. But remember, you're on a 30-foot line. Do not throw the ball or the treat beyond 30 feet. Okay? Stay safe.
since your vests are double hook, so when I do long line at home, I have this attached to one hook and then the long line on the other one before I remove them. Is that okay?
That's fine. As long as they're connected. So here's the thing. Has anybody ever taken a leash off a dog and then you have a hold of their collar and you're trying to do something with the collar? What happens to the dog? The dog does a twist thing and then your fingers are stuck in the collar. You just want them to never be not hooked. Okay? So whatever that looks like is totally fine, because I have a dog collar where the clip is too small to take both hooks. So I clip the one to a different hook than the other one for the same reason, because both of them don't fit at the same time on the same hook. Okay, so that's perfectly fine. The other thing you can do is leave the short leash on and attach your long line to the handle of the short leash, and you can give yourself a little bit more room too. So if you have a 15-foot or a 20-foot line instead of a 30-foot line, you can add 6 more feet to it with that. The reason that we're using the 30-foot line is on the test, you will have to do a 20-foot stay and a 20-foot recall. So if you can do a 30-foot stay and a 30-foot recall, can you do a 20-foot stay and a 20-foot recall on the test? Yes. Okay. Now, today's not about distance, okay? Today is about safety and feeling comfortable on the long line. All right. We're going to work on some other exercises in the next few weeks to get you that distance that you need for the test. But today is about safety. Okay. Are there any questions about the long line? All right. So then you're going to do 10 recalls and then 10 stays. Do the recalls first, get them moving their feet. Now, you can either throw something to send them away from you, or you can let them wander away. So when they figure out they have more perimeter, sometimes your dogs will just wander away on their own. Either one is appropriate. Okay? All right, any other questions?
You're going to have to train me on the long line, because I've been able to do it with Eddie with no leash, but we might take a little bit getting used to it.
Yeah, that's okay, and that's what today's for.
Yep.
That's what today and this week is for, is just to get familiar and comfortable on the line. Okay, all right, so 10 recalls and 10 stays on the long line.
And Callie, it starts with
Practicing
getting
the
up off
break.
floor.
Yep, and working on that break and being safe.
So yeah, somebody can have the sidewalk there, and then somebody can have this shade spot here.